The Daily Jaws 50th Anniversary interview series is a collection of amazing conversations exploring the legacy of Steven Spielberg's screen adaptation of Jaws through the eyes of the fans. We'll be talking to famous fans, shark experts, people whose lives have been changed by the movie, and those that were there that helped to make the film. We'll also be telling you about two amazing organisations that are very close to our hearts. Anyway, that's enough from me. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
It's about life. It isn't about a specific thing. I think so many movies are about like a very specific conceit, whereas Jaws just feels like you're just in this small part of the world and you just get to experience their lives, and all of the idiosyncrasies, all of the minutiae of lives, you know, is right there. Really, it's my kind of love letter to Jaws is what it is, because in doing that project, I completely fell in love with the film again. It wasn't about the shark necessarily. You know, yes, it could be defined as a monster movie, but that's not what makes it great as such.
Welcome, Jamie.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We've been wanting to speak to you for a long, long time. We've long been a big admirer of your work for quite a while now. And obviously, you know, we're both massive Jaws fans, and we're here because it's the 50th anniversary. I mean, can you believe it's 50 years since Steven Spielberg's Jaws came out?
Well, I mean, I was born in 76, so it's been there my entire life. I don't know a time when Jaws wasn't part of my life, really. You know, whether it was being scared by the poster as a very small child or having a whole new appreciation for it now as a nearly 49-year-old, yeah.
It's incredible, isn't it? I think when I've been having these conversations with people, they all seem to remember the music, the poster, the hype around it, and then obviously that amazing experience of going to see it in the cinema. When was the first time you saw the movie, and what do you remember about that experience?
Well, later than you might think, because I remember, I think it must have been like late 81, October 81. I think it was going to be shown on ITV, and I remember my grandparents had the TV Times, and I remember staring at that cover and just going, what is this? You know, I was kind of aware of the film because kids were talking about it at school. I'd been 5 at the time, so I'd missed the cinema experience for sure. And yeah, that I just remember, I think I told this to Joe Alves once. I think 23 million people sat down and watched that film that night, which is basically like half of the country sat down and watched that film, which is insane when you compare it to today's audiences. But I don't think I saw it until maybe the early to mid 80s, like 83, 84, 85. I remember I had a friend who lived over the road. He had an older brother. I remember seeing Return of the Jedi over there after I'd seen it at the cinema in 83. And I think shortly after that, he had a VHS, must have been from that ITV recording. And I remember seeing the Kitna scene and just thinking, oh, this is not for me. I know, A, I know I shouldn't be watching this because I was too young, kind of thing. And B, I had this gut feeling that, you know, horror was not my thing. And it took me a really long time to actually get round and sit down and watch the whole thing. I think I probably didn't see it until I was like 12 or so. And even later in my 20s and 30s, I still found some scenes quite difficult to watch. I've always kind of avoided horror, and I think Jaws it was really partly a horror film. And yeah, it took me a long time to get comfortable with it. Probably doing my own projects about it is what got me comfortable with watching Jaws. I think, you know, like many people, Jaws definitely affected how comfortable or not comfortable I feel swimming in the sea. In fact, I was in Hawaii once, in Kauai, and I was on like a surfboard, and my brother-in-law said to me, "Don't look down, just keep breathing, and we're going to back into shore really slowly." And I didn't look down, but I felt this thing go past my leg like sandpaper, and it like was going and kept going and kept going. And I just thought, "Oh my God, this is it! You know, I'm done for." And then my brother-in-law, Ben, bless him, he's brilliant. He's a good surfer. He just said, okay, we're just going to paddle in really slowly. Don't kick your legs, just slow movements with your hands. And we got in. I said, what was it? And he said, I'm never telling you. Convinced to this day that it was a shark. So I'm done swimming in the sea. Like, I'm done.
But I think that's part of the effect of Jaws, though, isn't it? That sort of put a lot of people off from, you know, ever going in the ocean or even bathtubs or anything ever again to do with water, but also created a whole heap of people that became fascinated by sharks as well and have actually pursued careers. And we're speaking to a few of those people on the series. But like you, I had a very similar experience when I watched the movie because I was born in 79, so obviously too young to go and see it in the cinema when it first came out. If I was to invent a time machine, that's probably the one thing I'd use it for, to be honest. Go back to 1975 and experience Jaws for the first time.
Yeah.
Forget world peace, that comes second. Um, but I just think like a lot of people like us, we kind of caught it on TV. And I remember my first experience of Jaws was watching it on TV late night, and I think it was part of ITV's Murder Mystery Suspense series. So it wouldn't have been the 1981 showing that you saw, it would have been a few years later. And I remember just it being so distinctly different to anything else I'd ever seen as a kid before. Because I was watching things like Superman and Star Wars: A New Hope and The Wizard of Oz, these big, bright,
Yeah.
fantastical movies that were definitely made for me.
Yeah.
And then I watched Jaws, and it's completely different in tone. And like you, when I saw the Alex Kintner scene, I'm
Mm.
thinking two things. One, is the dog okay? And two, a kid's just died, but kids don't die in movies.
Mm. Yeah.
And then you kind of realize anything's up for grabs at this point now in terms of this movie, and it just kind of brings you into the story sort of even more.
Yeah. Definitely.
What is it that makes Jaws, do you think, so special? Because obviously not every movie, not everyone's talking about it 50 years later, and this is like a seminal point, not just in Jaws history, but movie history. What is it that you think makes Jaws so
Well,
special?
there are so many things. I mean, it's always talked about as the first big blockbuster, and often it's kind of blamed for that shift, in Hollywood. But I think, you look back at Jaws now, and it's almost like it's a grown-up movie. I mean, kids' movies these days are all, computer animated cats and dogs talking.
Mm.
Kids' movies back then. I mean, this is kind of was pitched as a sort of a teens movie at the time.
Mm.
Um, I think, you said it just a minute ago, just when it becomes fair game for anyone in that cast to potentially be in. I mean, it's a brilliant opening. I mean, it's
Mm.
got to be one of the best openings in a film ever, because immediately you just go, oh good, oh God, this could be awful, this could be terrible. I had a similar experience in the cinema just this weekend, just the start of the weekend. I went to see The Substance finally, and in a
Mm.
packed cinema with 300 people, and people were verbalizing, going, "Oh, F this," "Oh, it's that," because you sort of participate as an audience. And I think what's great about cinema is you're locked in that dark room as such.
Yeah.
It's not like you can stop it and go and make a cup of tea, which I've done before when I'm watching a horror movie at home. I love that cinema experience, and then it just kind of grows from there. I think all of that word of mouth that went around. But you said it before about the sort of there's that primeval thing about what is below the surface of the water. I know I'm good from here, from my waist up, but what is it, that could be further down below? And I still have it now. Like I was on holiday in Greece last year, and I just looked under the water, and of course you see some quite big fish. And for a minute, you sort of have that moment of panic. And I'm sure that's just Jaws is hardwired, into my head. And it took me 12 months, I would say, in making my Inside Jaws filmumentary to sort of get happy with that film and just kind of
Yeah.
see it as a film itself, rather, because I was just so invested in it, because as I'm sure we're going to go to talk about, some of those characters are just the best.
Oh. And I think you've hit on something really, really important there. And we've kind of talked about it in a few of the interviews, but I think Jaws is one of and cinema in general, but I think Jaws really sort of showed the potential for cinema and storytelling to be a communal experience. It was kind of like a campfire story, but instead of a few people around a campfire, it's 500 packed in a cinema.
Yeah.
And you all go through the same experience, no matter no matter how many times you've gone to see the movie. And I don't know if you caught it when the movie was re-released on 3D and IMAX a few years ago, but I did the double. I saw it at the IMAX in the BFI in London, and I went to see it in 3D in my local cinema. For my money, it's one of the best 3D transformations, I guess is the word,
Yeah.
of a classic movie. I mean, it just works so well. But again, it's testament to Spielberg and Bill Butler's choices of shots to use, because I guess it's only as good as the shots they've got to work with. But when it came out, I imagine it was almost like being transported back to 1975, because there was a lot of people there, particularly parents, obviously bringing kids to see the movie for the first time. And it played exactly the same way as it probably would have done back in 1975. The kids were laughing when they were supposed to laugh, cheering, gasping, screaming. Everything in that movie worked, and they were completely invested. And this is a movie that's sort of nearly, well, at that point, I think maybe 46, 47 years old. So it's just like a good story works if it's told well.
Yeah, I tell you what, I had that sort of time travel experience that you're talking about just in 2023, because at the BFI, they had a film on film festival. They're actually showing film prints, like nitrate prints of things, and those dangerous prints that if they get hot, that's it, they're gone, kind of thing. And they found a pristine print of Jaws in the National Archives. the story of it was that it had gone to, they think, ITV for the telecine to convert it to tape for the broadcast in 81, and then had literally been shelved. So it was the original mono mix, original color timing on film, dust and scratches, but still amazing looking. It had only been put through the projector a couple of times ever. And I sat in that audience in the main BFI cinema, the big screen there, Screen 1, I think it is. And the guy presenting it is now a pal of mine, Doug Weir. He's the restoration guy at BFI. He said, who's not seen Jaws in the audience right now? And I would say over half of the audience put their hands up.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, it was like going back in time. I'd never seen it on the big screen back then. I'd seen it, I think, for the 20th. And I'd seen it just like a few years ago. Like you said, I saw it at the IMAX, not in 3D, but at the BFI IMAX. But it was like seeing the film again, because there's so many things you notice, I think, when you watch something on the big screen. It's something to do with being able to look into people's eyes and it just being on that scale. And watching those amazing interactions with people, people talking over each other and all of that. I love all that about Jaws. That gives it a real reality. And it worked. Like, it still worked. People were jumping out of their seats. I actually started watching the people rather than watching the screen, because that was...
So did I.
Interesting and compelling,
That was exactly how I felt about it, because I've had two brilliant experiences with Jaws at the cinema. So I think it was just after I started the Daily Jaws, so for the 40th anniversary, so probably around 2015, and Jaws was back in the cinema. And I went to the cinema, bought my ticket, and I walked into the cinema, and you know what? I was the only one there.
Really?
It was just me. I actually did a video. It was one of my first videos on my personal YouTube, going, here I am in the cinema on my own, about to watch my favorite movie. And it was a wonderful experience to watch it on my own on the big screen, no distractions. But nothing beats watching it with people who are watching it for the first time, particularly in a cinema. So it all comes back to that campfire communal experience. And I think Jaws is just testament to the power of the story, and just bringing people together for that common cause, even if it's just for 2 hours. And I think, there's only a very few filmmakers that really are able to kind of do that even now, but they're still harking back to Jaws and seeing how was that done. And to your point, there's just so many things there. And Jaws is sort of held up as a fantastic example of filmmaking craft. Is there one particular aspect of the film craft in Jaws that you think stands out above the others, or do you think it's just almost like impossible to pick one, because it's like picking between your favorite kids kind of thing?
Yeah, there are so many good aspects about it. Just going back briefly to one of your points, just something just occurred to me about that campfire communal experience. You've got that on one side, but on the other side, you've got that we are going to die alone feeling, and Chrissy dies alone, Alex Kintner dies alone. All those characters throughout that dying alone. And so that sort of reminds you that, the disconnect that we have between the community aspect and the fact that we are individuals. And in the end, we do finish on our own. We started on our own and we finish on our own. I think it's so difficult, isn't it, to pick the best aspects of Jaws, because I think it's one of those things, it's like the perfect storm in a way. It's this confluence of amazing talent. I mean, without Verna Field's amazing editing, and I mean, it is edited so fantastically. She was clearly a very instinctive but also cerebral director who knew exactly the limits to which you could take things. And the fact is, it still holds up today. I know people still go, oh yeah, but the shark looks a bit rubbish. And it's like, hang on, they built a huge shark and put it in the ocean. I would rather that any day than having, any other alternative. I'm not going to kind of dig out CGI, because there's some great CGI out there. But at the same time, there is something about that visceral nature of those films back then, like Raiders and Star Wars and Jaws. I think three of the main ones, really, that where you actually feel like you're tangibly there. And you don't doubt for a second, really, that you're out in the middle of the ocean and, you're isolated and you're with those three characters. And, those three characters are just the best. I mean, they're so amazing, and Spielberg's direction and the cinematography, Bill Butler and Michael Chandler's camera work and all that stuff. Even the sound design is fantastic. These days it's primitive to compare to what we're used to now, but it still works, just like that soul sound of the bell on the buoy, just like ding, ding, ding. It's incredible. I think so many amazing choices were made through that creative process, where there were so many barriers up against it. You got Spielberg in his early 20s trying to fight his way through this movie, being guided by some of these veterans of the film industry. And I think that wouldn't have happened if he'd have been given free rein as a young, upcoming, director who wanted to prove himself. I don't think without those restrictions, it would be the movie it is today. And, the fact that it still stands up and I still watch it and it still makes my heart pump, and I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think, when it comes to Jaws, obviously we will talk about the production because obviously it was not the easiest production,
Mm.
but it was like, the NBA All-Stars or the Harlem Globetrotters or whoever it is. It was just the perfect team of people to come together to deliver on their own individual aspects of the movie. Like, as you said, John Williams' music, Vernon Field's editing, Michael Chapman's camera operation, Bill Butler's cinematography, all of those things coming together. But then also having Spielberg in the middle of it all. I mean, how much must he have learned during Jaws? Because for me, that's when Spielberg wasn't just announced as this major talent, but I think he just started to understand how to really make a great, great movie, which is why we're still talking about this 50 years later. And that's not to take anything away from what he's done, but I think
Mm.
prior to Jaws, but I think there was a definite shift in terms of his knowledge of filmmaking or his ability to deliver on the biggest of projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
And I
let's.
know that I sorry, just to interject there, I know that like Joe Alza told me that when, I think he was 10 years older than Spielberg at the time. And I think, Zanuck and Brown sort of said, Joe, go with Steven. Like, he's going to need somebody with your experience. And he told me that Spielberg at points during, I think this was Sugarland Express and Jaws, that he would say that Spielberg would say, like, I feel like I'm stealing for you guys. You've got all these ideas. And Joe said, no, that's what we do. We give you an idea. If you like it, we'll go for it. If you don't, we'll find something else. It's as simple as that. But I think Spielberg at that time was like a sponge, in his early 20s. He was just soaking all of that stuff up.
Yeah.
And then, of course, after that, doing Close Encounters and then doing, Raiders to kind of prove himself as a director who could do something quickly. I think at that point he was reinventing himself as Steven Spielberg. You got a Steven Spielberg movie written under the poster of the name of the film. Before that, you didn't really see that on movie posters, particularly in that era. But I think Spielberg then sort of went about reinventing himself to be this name and be this icon. And I think it's only in recent years, like with the Fablemans, where he's actually gone back and gone, without these elements and these people, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah. And I think it's absolutely right. And one of the things that Jeffrey Kramer has said a few times is that Spielberg was very open to collaboration as well
Yeah.
in the moment, particularly from an acting point of view. There are quite a few improvised moments that Jeffrey has talked about, and like for example, one of my all-time, and again, we talk about the craft of Jaws. It's such a funny film as well. When you watch it closely, it's such a funny
Yeah.
film. Like that, one of my favorite moments in Jaws in terms of humor is when Brody's just running around panicking. He's on the phone in his little police hut in the harbor, and he's trying to get Hendricks' attention, and he throws the rocks at the window, and yeah, he gives it that little wave. That was
Yeah, I
completely
love it.
improvised, apparently. That was like, yeah, as I said, Stephen, that's what I'm going to do, and he went, cool, go for it, and it works. It's brilliant, and it's just like it's
Yeah.
wonderful to have a director who's obviously as talented as Steven Spielberg, but also as open to collaboration and recognizing the value of those collaborations. And you get something as perfect as Jaws. It's like you could have walked away at Jaws, Stephen, and we would have been happy. But the fact that
Yeah.
you've continued for 50 years and consistently delivered movies that, and I think this is one of the things that you touched on earlier on, which is I think the difference between Steven Spielberg and a lot of other filmmakers is a lot of filmmakers seem to make movies for the moment. And I know that's probably a lot more guided by studio and trending and marketing, a lot kind of stuff, rather than the storytelling itself. But Spielberg seems to make movies that you go back and revisit 50 years ago, 50 years later, and you go, damn, that's what he's been trying to tell me the whole time.
Mm.
I didn't realize that's what I was watching. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It feels like these are movies that grow with you, I
Yeah.
think.
I think so. And I think, another point to talk about the making of aspect of it is just how well written it is. Spielberg and Gottlieb would go away at night and go into their chalet there and be writing tomorrow, because they were trying to work out what we got today and how's that going to connect to this scene. And they were filling in the gaps as they went. And I think there is that sort of immediacy about Jaws, like I talked about, all that people talking over each other. It feels like it's happening right now. It doesn't feel rehearsed.
Mm.
And I think what's really good as well is so much of the character is built through their actions and their dialogue. There's just that scene. I love that scene just before the Indianapolis speech where, you know, Brody he goes to look at his scar and realizes that, okay, it's my appendix scar kind of thing. It's just, it's perfect because you immediately understand that character. I mean, he's the eyes through which we see the film, really. He's the everyman and everything. But even in those opening scenes with him, he's kind of having that sort of flirty banter with his wife. And you get this sense that of course, they've moved there and she doesn't really want to be there. And why did he move there? Did he have a problem in his previous post or whatever? All those things are not expressly told to you, but the character is built through those little insinuations and those little ideas. And I think, so many films these days, I hear a line and it just takes me out of the movie. It's like, yeah, you've put that in there rather than showing me, you're telling me, and I don't need to be told. Just, you know, just show me how it is for those people, and then they feel more real. You know, like she's at the sink washing his hand, and he's on the phone, and I just think that stuff is so good. You know, these days it would have just gone into a close up of him on the phone, and as he got the call that there was a death, it would have been like crash zoom in or something. You know, it's in talking of zooms, I mean that reverse dolly zoom on the beach still makes the hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stand up. You know, I haven't got hairs anywhere else, but at least I'm not, for people listening, I lifted my cap up.
But that's the beauty of again good storytelling, you know, and yours, as we say, is a great example of that. I mean, like when you watch the Kinter scene, you know, obviously you think, oh, it's about the blood and the guts and this kid being killed. It's like, no, it's about Brody's reaction.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
about this is not a problem that's going to go away very easily, and it's not something he can sit on a beach and just kind of wish he wasn't the one that's going to have to end up dealing with this problem one way or the other, you know. So again, it comes back to those highlighting of moments and the telling of and the showing of moments rather than telling us. But again, I think there is a certain shift in the way that stories are kind of told now, because I was speaking to a screenwriter about this a little while ago, and we kind of apparently this is a thing where it's like you've got to write something now with the second screen in mind, because people now watch movies with their phones in their hands.
no,
And I'm guilty of that as well. You know, I look at IMDb as I'm watching the movie. Who's that actor? What's their favorite color or whatever
yeah,
it happens to be?
yeah,
So I think that there's a little bit more exposition heavy rather than, as you say, just showing the audience what's happening and let them kind of take it in. But again, that's why movies like Jaws stand the test of time, because they're showing their stories rather than having to explain it in a much more simplistic way. Um, let's talk about the characters, because I mean, obviously we've got three of the greatest cast, or three of the three greatest lead casts actors ever. I mean, I've really struggled to find another movie that's this well cast. But you've also got a plethora, a buffet of other perfectly cast supporting characters as well. I mean,
yeah.
if I ask you who your favorite character is and why, I mean, you could be here half an hour trying to decide.
I mean, I would start and then I would start disagreeing with myself and say it was somebody else and then somebody else and somebody else because there are just so many. I mean, you know, you talked about Jeffrey Kramer. I think he's just got the perfect face and the perfect disposition acted in that movie to play that character. You know, he's fantastic. I do love Brody because, like I said, I think we see it through his eyes and he's a fish out of water, you know, pun intended. But you know, who doesn't love Quinn and who doesn't love? I mean, Dreyfus is fantastic in that movie as well. You know, I mean, there's been questions about him more recently about his outlook on life, but I think he is a very talented actor. And you know, some of those early interviews you hear about, oh, it's some of the worst work I've ever done, and you know, he was just on fire back then. There's something about people in their 20s reaching the top of their game
Mhm.
early on without even realizing it. And I think that is Dreyfus in that situation. But yeah, Shaw, I mean, Robert Shaw is just an incredible actor. There's nothing quite like, again, that scene, the Indianapolis scene, or his introduction. They're iconic moments. But it, like I said earlier, it doesn't feel old, that movie. It's kind of timeless. And it's because of those performances, because you buy those characters, you believe in those characters. And that's, again, testament to the writing and the direction and just everything being pulled together, all those strings being pulled together to create. I mean, it is damn near perfect, really, the movie. It really is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so difficult to pick a flaw. I mean, you can say, oh, you know, the practical effects have aged, but then it was made in 1974, came out in 1975, and actually that was probably the most innovative effect ever created at the time.
Yeah.
So to try and pick on the movie for that, it, for me, is very, very unfair. So
Yeah. Again, Joe Alp said to me, like, he said, you know, you think to yourself when you're doing these things, he said, you might as well give it a try and it'll probably be the best there is because nobody else is doing it. I mean, you look at other 70s movies that tried, well, to rip off Jaws. I mean, they're terrible for the most part. And films that preceded it that had big monsters in it look kind of dumb. I mean, with this, you bought it, but that's because of, you know, the great work that, you know, Joe and Roy Arbogast and all those guys did.
Mm.
Uh, but also because of that fantastic editing, you know, just taking it up to the very limit of where you can to communicate what you want. And,
Mm.
you know, all that stuff was storyboarded so heavily that last third. And you can really tell that it's, you know, looking back from a critical point of view as a film fan, a film reviewer and a film expert, if you like, um, just how just how finessed that really is, that
Mm.
third act.
Yeah.
I mean, you asked about the characters, I'm waffling on, but it's difficult. All of them. I mean, Polly, um, you know, everyone.
This is the great thing I love about Jaws, because no one's really had anything bad to say about it from a craft perspective, because every single aspect is brilliant. And when I've talked about the movie in the past, and again for this series, so people that are listening to every single interview, you're going to hear this again for the hundredth time. But for me, even though it was production hell, a lot of the right things went wrong and a
Mm.
lot of the wrong things went right, because ultimately, Dreyfus and Shaw weren't really cast, from what we understand, until about 9 days before principal
Mm.
photography. Roy Scheider got his role because he overheard Spielberg talking about a shark crashing onto a boat at a party.
Party,
It's
yeah.
like, it's just absolutely incredible coincidences. But then you build the rest of the cast around those three characters and those three actors who, again, no perfect. It's like you've got a really believable world. And for me, the characters are always why we go back to those movies, these stories, because that's our connection to that world and those events. And what would we do in that situation? And we see lots of different characters affected by the same problem in lots of different ways. I mean, one of my favorite, because when I first watched Jaws as a kid, I remember distinctly rewatching it again, but watching it and studying Quint more closely, because the first impression you get of him is completely different to the way that you see him at the end. And like that beautiful moment at the end where Hooper's come back up. Sorry, spoilers, guys. If you haven't seen Jaws, it's been 50
Yeah.
years. What have you been waiting for? But that amazing moment when Hooper comes back up from at the end, Brody's killed the shark, he swims over and it just asks him, Quint?
Quint.
And Brody says no. And then there's this beautiful moment where you just look into Hooper's eyes, and he's just thinking, it's a shame he's gone, because he wasn't who I thought he was. And
Yeah.
there's potentially a connection or a friendship there once we get back to shore that now I'll never have. It's not a story about a fish, I think, is basically what we're kind of trying to
Yeah.
understand. But on that, what do you think Jaws actually is about? What do you think it's trying to tell us?
I mean, I think Spielberg has been challenged on this a few times, hasn't he? Mark Kermode here in the UK often says it's a film, it isn't about a shark. And Simon Mayo, his co-presenter, says, well, I mean, it is about sharks, but
50 years later, people are going to see it, and they're going to see it not because of the rubber shark. That's the interesting. I know that we can constantly do the "it's not about a shark," but certainly going to a screening of Jaws, it's not about that. It's about the three-way interplay between those characters having that conversation on the boat. It's about the town, the little small town in crisis. It's about the beauty of the scenes out at sea. It's about the John Williams score. It's about all those things. It's not about the rubber shark.
To quote Steven Spielberg, it's about the shark.
Yeah.
the shark is just a device really to pull these three kind of disparate characters together, all with different attitudes, different perspectives, different backgrounds. And I think Roger Ebert kind of summed up movies the best. He said something like it's a machine for creating empathy. And we do have empathy for those characters at the end. We actually, like you say, when we first see Quint, we think, who's this guy? He seems like a bit of a nightmare. And by the end of it, we're like, oh no, he's gone. And you do feel that in that moment that you just described between Dreyfus and Scheider. And I think it is about sort of, again, like you said, putting yourself in those people's shoes and trying to, that's what empathy is. It's kind of thinking, right, if I was this person, how would I deal with that? And would I deal with this better? And can I understand that person better by putting myself in their shoes? And it is about community, and it is about capitalism, and it's all of those things. That's what's great about it. It's about life. It isn't about a specific thing. I think so many movies are about like a very specific conceit, whereas Jaws just feels like you're just in this small part of the world for a week or so, and you just get to experience their lives, and all of the idiosyncrasies, all of the minutiae of lives, is right there. Again, another very great character moment is, going when Brady goes into the shop and knocks all the paintbrushes over. You just think, that's exactly what would happen to me, but you wouldn't necessarily remember that moment, but it just kind of triggers a sort of subconscious understanding that I'm in a real world here. And then that's what makes the shark stuff so much more remarkable, is happening to these people that could be like me.
Yeah. But I think as well, like the other thing as well about the heroes, particularly Brody, is they're all flawed and they're all fragile. And that moment that you just picked up on there, where Brody goes into the store and knocks over the paintbrushes, is just like, this guy is not perfect. He really is probably the least equipped person to deal with this problem, and yet he's the one that actually ends up doing it. Spoilers. And again, that's part of the reason, why Charlton Heston, who apparently lobbied for the role wasn't cast, because I can't see him walking into a hardware store, knocking things over, and it being believable, because you just think, oh, that's acting, but that's not a character choice. So I think, again, it's all about that fragility of a hero and ultimately facing the fear. And again, there's so many different ways to read it. And as you said, there's capitalism and all of those other things going on. And this is why when I asked this question on all of the interviews we've done so far, the answer has been slightly different, because people are seeing slightly different things in this movie. And again, that's the mirror aspect of great storytelling. It's like, what do you see when you see this story?
Yeah, and you take they often say, don't they, that you get from a movie what you take into it. And because this has been around for 50 years, this movie, I've gone into multiple screenings of it over the years. I've watched it hundreds of times on VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, and each time I'm a different person, right? Because life goes along and different things happen, and people have passed away, and relationships have ended, and all that stuff. And you go into it with fresh eyes each time. And I think that is the power of cinema, isn't it? That we have a different experience every time. It's not the same. It really is not the same. Every time you'll notice something different. And if you do see it on the big screen, you'll go, that's new, that bit. Why is that bit in here? And you're like, oh, it has been there all this time. I've just never picked up on it. I love that about cinema. I love that about the big screen experience. But that's why I love movies, because they reflect back to us what we're feeling at the time.
Hey guys, it's Ross. I hope you're enjoying this week's episode. Bruce and I just wanted to take a moment to tell you about a couple of the organisations that we've been working with, and also some of the new products you can find in our store. Minorities in Shark Sciences, or MISS for short, a non-profit founded in 2020 that champions diversity in shark, ray and marine sciences. MISS creates equitable opportunities for historically underrepresented communities through hands-on programs, and believes that diverse scientists bring diverse ideas, driving the innovation essential for ocean conservation. Representation matters, and MISS is making sure the next generation sees a place for themselves in marine biology. Learn more and support their mission at missalesmo.org. The mission of the Tourette Association of America is to provide help and hope to those affected by Tourette syndrome, tic disorders, and associated conditions through awareness, research, and support. It's the only national organisation serving the community, and works to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support to patients and families impacted by Tourette syndrome and tic disorders. To this end, the Tourette Association of America directs a network of 31 chapters, 83 support groups, and recognises 18 centres of excellence across the country. It's a non-profit organisation and is extremely close to the heart of not just Jeffrey Kramer, but also his family. The Daily Jaws store is home to some of the world's most exciting Jaws products, including screen-accurate barrels and tanks, a chalkboard shark shadow caster, a yellow barrel koozie, an orca transom and 3 yellow barrel keychains, and much more. Visit store.thedailyjaws.com. For non-US orders, please email orders@thedailyjaws.com. Thanks for listening. Now back to the show. Well, I had a few years ago, I had an experience, because I thought I knew the movie forwards and backwards. Not to say that I know everything about the movie, because we're still making discoveries. But I noticed something, and I flagged it with a couple of people that were actually involved in the movie, and they went, I didn't even notice that. Right. So it's a part where it's just after the kitchen scene where Brody's just taken the phone call about the girl gone missing, and there's a shot outside of the house, and Brody and Ellen come out.
Yeah.
But before then, Michael comes running out, and he runs around the back of the house, and you know what he's got in his hands? Snorkeling gear. He's about to go swimming.
Oh, really?
And if you watch it, it's like, that is such a subtle but terrifying moment, because we know what Brody doesn't know, that there's a shark out there and his son's about to go swimming. Wow. It's just like, that is absolute genius. I actually did a screen grab breakdown of that moment, and I'm just like, has anyone else spotted this? And everyone's like, nope. And I'm like,
but I wonder if that had gone in subconsciously, to people, particularly people watching it on the big screen, because I think you probably wouldn't really notice it unless it was on, because that's a fairly wide shot, is it? As they come out?
It is. Yeah, it's quite a wide distance shot. Yeah. Absolutely incredible. I'm just like, this is terrifying. But I'm like, there are so many things to spot in this movie, which brings me to the next question, because Jaws is, as we know, and I think is the general consensus, it's 2 hours and 4 minutes of just absolute perfection. Which is your favorite moment in Jaws?
I think I sort of mentioned it. I was trying to think about this, like what is the best moment? I think it's that moment just before the Indianapolis speech, because of course, really my favorite bit is that bit, but that everybody's going to say that. But my favorite bit is just how each of those moments with the scars defines each of those characters, and Brody is worried about showing his appendix scar, and you've got Dreyfus there just being the petulant rich kid, and he's trying to show off, and then Quint there's just that amazing moment where Dreyfus is laughing and then he realizes what Quint is saying, and he just stops, and like you hear him breathe, and then you're totally drawn into that moment. I just, what follows that, of course, is one of the best monologues ever in movie history, and super interesting story behind the scenes of all the people that contributed to that as well, and the whole stuff about Robert Shaw being a bit drunk on one day and having to come back the next day. I mean, that's the thing. Jaws is an absolute mine of this stuff that we love, behind the scenes stuff. But I think that scene, just leading into that scene, is just so well crafted, because you completely understand those characters 100%, and then that they're in that. As soon as that banging starts happening on the boat, for a ride, because you understand that these people are starting to gel together, even though they're from these completely different backgrounds, completely different outlooks. And then you've got that last, I don't know, what is it, half an hour, 40 minutes or something, that's just gonna go all hell for leather.
Yeah. Did Joe ever tell you the story about how they did the shot of the shark ramming the boat from the side?
Yeah. So I'll interject with this now, that we're making a documentary about Joe, as we have been for a couple of years now, and we're doing it in our spare time, and it's difficult to find the time to do it. But we've got some amazing footage of Joe on his front driveway talking about exactly where he was doing it. Like, so him and Kevin Pike had put together a few boards of wood, and Stephen had a camera, and they were hitting it with a hammer, and they had a hose and all this stuff. And Joe tells that so nicely, that story. And I mean, I'm sure he's told it hundreds of times over the years, but to be in that same spot that he was doing stuff, because that shot, if people don't know, that shot was added really late on. They'd screened the movie, and Stephen said, I need one more scream, one more big moment, and they put the head in, from earlier in the movie. But they also added a few insert shots, that being one of them, and it was done on their own time with some wood that happened to be in Joe's garage, and they knocked it together. And I think he borrowed the camera. I think they borrowed the head as well, didn't they, for that scene in Verner's pool? I think they went in, stole it from the studio, basically. But that's what I love about Jaws. Again, it's that sort of visceral nature of it, where you can sort of, once you've got out of watching it as an audience member and you go in as an appreciator of movies, you can see the fingerprints on it, not in a kind of way that takes you out of the movie, but an appreciation of when you find out all these stories, like from people like Joe and Roy Arbogast and people that I've spoken to for this documentary, which isn't a Jaws documentary, it's a Joe Alves documentary. It's just amazing to me the lengths that they went to achieve that stuff. Whether it was just, we need that 2 more seconds because that's gonna be it. That's how finessed it was.
Yeah. And that's what I love about, particularly the making of Jaws, and we're going to come on to Inside Jaws soon, because I think the other thing as well about Jaws that I think really helped sell the mythology of it is just, it was the first, for me anyway, the first real sort of peek behind the curtain in terms of filmmaking, with Carl Gottlieb's Jaws log, and then everything else that's kind of come from that. But the thing I love about Jaws is that, you've got these rumored to be between $250 to $350,000 mechanical sharks each. And then on the other end of the effect spectrum, you've got 2 guys on a driveway kicking a piece of wood. I'm just like, it's like whatever it takes to tell the story is what it takes to tell the story. And when you get that right, you're going to be talked about in 50 years' time, which is why we're here now. Let's talk about Inside Jaws. So how did that come about, and how did you put that together?
So in the early 2000s, it must have been about 2005, I was a member of a group called originaltrilogy.com as a website and a forum about the Star Wars movies. And there were a lot of fan projects going on. Do you remember like the Phantom edit, where they took shots out of the Phantom Menace to make it less silly? So they got rid of Jar Jar Binks and all that stuff. So fan editing has started to gain a bit of momentum. So I made this thing called Building Empire, which was all of the behind the scenes info, interviews, video footage, photos that I could find on The Empire Strikes Back. And then I took the film as it was, dropped it on a timeline in, at the time, it must have been Final Cut Pro 7. And then I went about putting all of the behind the scenes bits in the place that they existed. So like in their context. Because what I always loved as a kid, watching films like Movie Magic and watching those, making of Star Wars and returning from Star Wars to Jedi, the making of a saga, all of that stuff, was being able to see like the on-set stuff with all the nuts and bolts and all the people there and all the lights and everything, and then it would cut to the movie clip. And I love that sort of stark contrast between the two. And that's what I did with building Empire. And I thought Empire Strikes Back was probably the least kind of exploited in terms of behind the scenes stuff, because there was a documentary made for it, but it was about the special effects in particular. And there was another documentary made about it that only got showed once in France, and then Lucasfilm pulled the plug. And that was for like 4 years, and then somebody found a copy of it somewhere fairly recently. So I did that with Empire Strikes Back, I did it with Return of the Jedi, I did it with Star Wars, I did it with Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Jim Bella, Jaws collector extraordinaire,
Yes.
JawsCollector.com, also one of the nicest guys you can meet.
Hi Jim, love you.
I love your Raiders filmumentary. Could you do one on Jaws? And I was like, well, I know Raiders and I know the Star Wars trilogy really well. I don't know Jaws as well, because I'm honestly in my 30s still. I was still a bit afraid of watching that movie. So I said, well, look, I could do it with your help, Jim. And he said, well, here's a load of material. Here's some stuff of like Joe Alves giving a lecture at Jaws Fest. Here's a bit with some outtakes that was from a TV show in the 80s. And here's a TV version of the film where they got rid of Dreyfus doing the fist as he's climbing up the ladder. They cut to a tackle box instead. And so he just gave me this material. And then, of course, I went hunting myself, and I swapped VHSs and DVDs with people that might have had a bit of material that I didn't have, and I had something they didn't have. And I just went about making this kind of 3D puzzle of the movie. So you can watch that movie and, you can hear a Spielberg commentary for the first time. He famously doesn't really do commentary. So there's a lot of Spielberg talking in there that I found snippets of over the years and put those together. And you've got roughly about, I think, 2 hours 25 or something of Jaws kind of being made in front of you. Obviously, films aren't made chronologically for the most part, but it's just really, it's my kind of love letter to Jaws is what it is, because in doing that project I completely fell in love with the film again, and had a whole new appreciation for it. And it was at that point actually that I started to get courted by a few studios. So I had a thing going on with Fox. I was invited to a couple of movie sets by fairly well-known directors and wanting to do projects. I was in the New York Times because of that. I had a double page spread in the New York Times. So it all started to kick off then. Unfortunately, all of those things kind of collapsed, as they often do. That's kind of ultimately what led to me, years later, to do my podcast. And because that was the bit I loved the most, was inside Jaws. Actually, Raiding the Lost Ark was my first one where I went out and sought out interviews myself. I went and did the interviews with people, whereas before I was just grabbing bits from YouTube and videos and things. And that's the bit I loved the most. I loved going chatting to these people and creating relationships with these people, and just never wanting to dig dirt about anyone, but just trying to find out more information, because I had this sort of thirst to kind of get these stories and make sure they're there for future generations to listen to. That's what I feel my work, if we can call it. I mean, it's my hobby in many ways. That's what I feel like it is. It's like a repository of fun, interesting, great behind the scenes stories. All that stuff I miss from DVD commentaries that we used to get, back in the 90s, which they don't do so much now. I've sort of replaced it. Cinefex is gone, and a lot of those magazines, Cine Fantastique and all of those things have gone. And that's the sort of hole that I tried to fill with these projects. And Inside Jaws was just a blast doing it, because I was going, I never knew that. I mean, I didn't even notice the snorkel thing. I must have looked at that film like 1,000 times at that point. But just so cool. And speaking to like Jeffrey Voorhees and, Jeffrey Kramer, and just Jim going, oh, here's the phone number of Joe, give him a call, Unfortunately, I didn't get much of Joe in there at the time. I can't remember why. I think he was traveling or something. But future years, I've got to know him pretty well. And as I said, making the doco and everything. So that's what I love about doing these projects, is the friendships you create and the relationships you create over time, because you never know how long the tail of those moments are going to be. Things come back around, and then they go, oh, you should speak to this guy. And I've had people come to me now to be on the podcast and talk about their book or whatever. And that's what's great about it. I just love being in that world. That's what we all do, right, Russ? Is we want to get closer to the movies we love, and that's why you do what you do, right?
Yeah, and that's the for me anyway, I think is probably going to be the lasting legacy of the Daily Jaws, and
Mm.
very much like Filmumentaries. It started off with a passion of just sharing my love for the movie, and then as you get sort of deeper down that rabbit hole, you start to make connections, you start to meet those people who are involved in the movie, and then you start to meet people associated with other movies who are similar or whatever it is, and it's like my phone book now has just got the most random and most well-known people in it, and I'm just like, it was really embarrassing. I was sitting in a pub the other day with a friend, and my phone rang, and it was quite a well-known person on the phone, and they went, is that the I went, yeah, can you give me 5 minutes? And I'm like, and I literally had to say to this person, I can't talk right now. Because I'm like, how I should be available to this person. And I went back into the pub and they went, so you know that person? Kind of. How? Jaws? Yeah. Maybe I need to start a Jaws page. I went, no, you're all right. Don't worry.
Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
worry. Don't worry about it. So, but the thing is, it's all about great intentions and keeping the legacies of movies alive. And like we say, when the Jaws log came out, when Inside Jaws came out, when Jim's amazing book Memories of Martha's Vineyard that was co-written, or sorry, that was co-written by Jim and Matt Taylor came out, you think, well, that's all there is to know about Jaws. That's it, surely.
Mm.
Well, those guys are bringing out a new updated version of their book. We
Yeah.
continue to make discoveries as well through the Daily Jaws, and it's just like there's just so much of a rabbit hole down here, and the access to the people that have been involved, particularly in Jaws, has been phenomenal. Like the amount of people that have been involved that have said, Ross, what do you need? Speak to that person. It's just incredible. So for me, it comes back to that, not just the campfire communal experience of watching the movie, but also being able to access the people that created the story for us. Now, obviously, Jaws came from a book by Peter
Yeah.
Davison.
Yeah.
And the book and the movie are very, very different for various reasons, different plot points, different characters, all that kind of stuff. What did you make of the book, and how do you think the direction that the movie took was correct in terms of what the book offered?
Yeah, I remember reading the book probably in the late 80s, early 90s, because I thought and I knew I liked the film, right? But I felt like I needed to access it in a different way because I think I'm quite visual. If I see a visual thing, it kind of imprints itself on my brain. Whereas
Yeah,
with a book, I can sort of divert the imagery that's being written in my head or drawn in my head. But I remember reading the book and I remember thinking it was sort of too convoluted and there were too many threads, there were too many aspects to it. And I think, again, that's what's amazing about Gottlieb's writing and Spielberg writing it as well, is that they managed to distill it down to the essence like of that particular what is available to that particular medium, because I think a book should be a book and a film should be a film. And people say, oh, the film's nowhere near as good as the book or vice versa. Well, they're completely different mediums. They do completely different things. That's why Watchmen as a comic, the Alan Moore comic, is incredible. I mean, it's absolutely one of the best. When the film came along, it wasn't that great. The visuals were good, but it just didn't do the job that the comic book does. And I think each of those mediums have their own pluses and minuses. And I think, yeah, they just managed to distill it down into its essence and into its, just the bits that you needed. Because I think the film could have, if there had been the whole affair and all of that stuff, I think it would have been a distraction from what we've been talking about up until now, just about the interaction between those three characters. It would have added an extra level that was kind of unnecessary as far as I'm concerned. What do you think of the book? Is it something that you revisit?
Um, Yes, it is something that I've read. I've read it a few times, and I've gone back to specific points as well because I'm just curious to see when I go back and maybe watch the movie, and I sort of keep, say, for example, the mayor's mob ties in my mind. I'm like, can I see something in Murray Hamilton's performance there that alludes to that kind of thing? Is that the pressure he's actually under, desperately trying to keep the beaches open, or is he literally just keeping the beaches open so the town survives another year because this is the biggest moment?
Yeah.
So there are different ways that you can apply the book to the movie, but I absolutely agree. The book is the book, the movie is the movie, and they're two completely different mediums. And also, as well, one of the things that's massively missing from the book, obviously, which isn't possible, is John Williams' score. Like, the role that the music played in the movie was so important. And even Spielberg himself has said, I think it's something like he said, 50% of the success of that movie is down to the music, because it gave me the shark I didn't have. So I think, it's two different ways of telling the same story. And I think, the book's good, but I think the way that the movie sort of chose its battles from the book and stuck to them and grew them and gave it that depth and gravitas and all of those other things we've talked about in terms of the craft surrounding that. I think the movie, it just took everything to the next level by actually stripping the book back, which I think is sort of kind of what you were alluding to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then obviously we've got the sequels, Jamie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not really that familiar with the sequels. I will tell you, I've never seen the fourth one all the way through. I watched it once when it was on ITV 12, and um, I just went, okay, I don't think that's for me. The second one I've seen more than the others, I would say, because I think that was on TV a lot around the sort of mid to late 80s. I think it was,
Jaws 2 has done the rounds on TV a lot.
yeah. And of course, as a kid in the playground playing games, that whole thing of it biting on the electrical cable, we used to bite our pen in class and just pretend to be electrocuted. I remember, that all going around the playground. And it's like you said about the music a minute ago, that that score for the shark has just become so synonymous with sharks. I think my daughter was playing a computer game some years ago, and when you went in the water, you just heard dirt, and she knew it meant shark. She didn't even know what Jaws was, but it's just in the cultural sort of memory, isn't it? That yeah, the sequels. I mean, I've watched Jaws 3D a bit recently, doing the doco on Joe. And I think what all of those sequels failed to realize, and what all of those, Star Wars rip-offs failed to realize back in the early 80s, was that it wasn't about the spaceships. It wasn't about the shark necessarily. Yes, it could be defined as a monster movie, but that's not what makes it great as such. So yeah, I don't revisit them. Maybe I'll go and watch the fourth one just so you won't give me that look again.
I honestly, I think you should definitely watch the fourth one. It was,
Yeah.
I think it was someone called it the greatest comedy of 1987. And I think it was a very good years for comedy. Yeah, it's the thing is, it's a very interesting movie because it starts off really promisingly. Like, it's actually a solid movie for the first sort of half an hour or so, but that's because there isn't much shark action and it's very focused back on Amity and the Brody family. And to be honest, the acting in it, up until that point is pretty good. And then the shark kind of gets involved and it's just like, okay, this is where we're going with this. And it's just crazy. I mean, it's so much fun. And again, we think we're correct on this. But there's a moment at the very end of the movie, just before the shark's about to die, and it's literally about out on its tail, out of the water, because that's what sharks do, and it's roaring, and it's a roar from a 1950s Godzilla movie, apparently,
Right.
and the editor left it in as a bit of a laugh, and they just thought, well, just leave it in.
Isn't there a roar of Godzilla as the shark goes down in the original Jaws after it's been shot? I'm sure I've read or
Yeah, so it's the same sound effect that was used in Duel when the truck goes over the cliff. And
Yeah,
because Spielberg always kind of felt that there was a synergy or a kinship between Duel and Jaws, 4 letters in the title, and
yeah.
it's essentially turns into a pursuit movie at the end and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when you look at that sound effect, the truck goes over the top. It's a very slowed down version of that sound, and then when the shark sinks to the bottom of the ocean in Jaws. And I actually did a post on this where I put both of the clips together, one on top of each other, and I actually put the sound effect on top so people could visually kind of see reconcile the two. And I thought, this is the one that's going to blow the Daily Jaws wide open. The world's going to be amazed by this. No one cared. Literally, like 4 people saw it.
Yeah.
I was just like, but it is what it is. It's just social media is the funniest thing.
I'll watch the fourth one. I mean, can the fourth one be sort of perceived as a standalone? Can you watch it as a standalone movie? If you does it give the backstory, or do you have to know the Brody family?
It helps if you do. It helps if you do, because there's a very short scene at the very beginning of the movie when Michael comes back to Amity and Ellen is sort of outside the house after Sean has just been killed, and she's kind of grieving, and Mrs. Kintner and Selectwoman Taft are actually in the Brody house. So there's definitely a definite attempt at sort of a continuity there and a return to Amity in every sort of aspect there. So it helps if you know the previous movies, but again, if you just watch it for what it is, it's just brilliant. It's absolute. Honestly, feet up, couple of beers, glass of wine, whatever it is, and just accept it for what it is. That's
All right,
I'll say.
I'll do it. Deal. You've got a deal.
So we're obviously, I mean, we're in 2025, the 50th anniversary of Jaws, and this is the, the era of, the requel, the prequel, the sequel, the afterwall, reboots, remakes, whatever it is. I mean, do we think Jaws is, and I don't mean just Jaws, the original movie, but I'm talking about Jaws as a whole. Do we think there's place for Jaws somewhere in the cultural sphere now beyond kind of these 4 movies? Do we think it's a spin-off? Is it a reboot? Is it a remake of the movie? What do you think there's a place for it?
I don't have any sort of interest in knowing any more about those characters because, like I was saying earlier on, like I learned about those characters through their actions and their dialogue in those movies, and I could write my own backstory. That's what it's like. The Book of Boba Fett didn't work for me because I'd already decided who Boba Fett was in my head.
Yeah.
I think there's probably, I might be right in saying this, I don't think there's been a good video game of Jaws, like a really good one that gets to the essence of why that film is so scary. I just think today with all that technology that we've got and VR and all of that stuff, maybe there could be a good Jaws story there.
That's a good shout. No one's actually said that yet because I was playing a VR a little while ago and there's like an underwater cage kind of game, and I'm like, well, this is basically Jaws, but it's done in the dark and it's very scary. But you could expand that to some key moments, like for example, you could be at the end of the pulpit with the harpoon gun, trying to shoot a barrel onto the shark or whatever it is. Again, I mean, I'm a vegan, I'm a plant-based animal, and I love animals. But again, it's just as a virtual experience to try and put yourself on the pulpit of the orca, that kind of in that way. That might be quite good fun. That's an interesting thing.
With Quint, just
Great. Do you know what was really funny? Must have been a couple of years ago. Paul Bettany, he crushed a can because he was trying. I think it might have been a Gansett can actually. He tried to crush a can, and it was like Robert Shaw was really strong because I can't do this. So yeah, virtual crush a can. Why not?
I mean, we could write a lot of levels here. I think, yeah, we need another meeting after this, Ross. I think we're onto something here.
I think we do. Universal, if you're listening, you've got my number. What about the shark movies after Jaws? Because obviously, as we know, whenever a massive genre movie is kind of comes along, everyone tries to sort of ride the wave, so to speak. Pardon the pun. What do you think of sort of like the shark movies post Jaws? Do you think we've actually had some good ones, or have they all been tosh?
Again, I think they've all kind of missed the point. They've made them about the shark and not about the people. I think the only one that sort of sticks in my mind, only one scene of it really sticks in my mind is was it Deep Blue Sea that had the very early eyes of Samuel L. Jackson. And I interviewed a guy recently, a guy called Jeff Oken, who was a visual effects guy, and it was actually him who decided that could be a good idea. Like, apparently Samuel Jackson wasn't really getting on with like the production, and he was just like, I don't do anything later on in this movie, a bit like the kind of Obi-Wan thing, let's get rid of him because he's just going to stand with his arms dangling by his sides for the rest of the movie. And yeah, I think that was the only time in a shark movie where I've just gone, oh well, I didn't expect that. I thought The Shadows was quite good. I thought what others have I seen? God, I mean, there've been so many, haven't there? And I think in that period straight after Jaws, when people were just trying to attach themselves to the success of Jaws by just getting a film out quickly, whether it's Piranha or whatever. I've read that book, Jaws Unmade.
Yes, I think I've actually got a copy of it here.
The orange.
Yeah, that one there. Yeah.
That's quite good. I mean, Jaws 3 People Zero, I think could have been interesting, taking it down the sort of National Lampoon path. But yeah, I just always gravitate back to Jaws because, like we said, it's damn near perfect. So yeah. So your favorite? Like, have you got a favorite of the kind of rip-offs?
I do. I've got the thing is for me, I think you're right. The actual shark movies, because it seems to have taken sort of two different directions where you've got the people that are trying to replicate the thrills of Jaws, like in terms of it being a thriller or whatever. Then you've also got the crazy ones like the Sharknadoes and Mecha Shark versus Optimus Prime or whoever he's fighting this week or whatever it is. And it's just like, okay, well, they're both interesting things, but it's like you're obviously clearly out of ideas. And to your point, you either don't understand the point of Jaws, or because that's been done so well, you're just not going to go near it again. So you're going to try something different. So taking into account that these pieces are probably not going to be about the characters, and it's going to be more about the guts, the gore, and the spectacle of people being eaten and chewed up. I quite like The Shallows. I thought that was good. I thought it was sort of back to basics in terms of man. I know it's Blake Lively, but man versus animal. And I thought the shark was done quite well. I thought the shark sequences were done good. They kept it off screen as much as they could. Deep Blue Sea was great as well, and Open Water I thought was interesting, even though it does drag a little bit. It was still good. I thought it was trying to be realistic. But my favorite sort of Jaws rip-off movie, if you like, is actually Lake Placid. And the reason I like that is because of the characters, because it seems to understand the point that Jaws was trying to make, but not trying to go over old ground, because it was very, very tongue in cheek. Jaws was never really that sort of tongue in cheek in that respect. Lake
Yeah.
Placid is, and the director Steve Miner, he kind of knew the assignment, and it's a very short movie. I think it's like 1 hour 25 minutes maybe, and it's sort of in and out very quickly. But you go back and you think Oliver Platt's great in it, Bill Pullman's great in it, Bridget Fonda's great in it. There's someone else I'm missing.
I saw that as a double bill with Anaconda when it came out.
Oh, what?
That was
Yeah.
the 4 hours that I'll never get back yet. No, they were both great though, because they were both sort of harkening back to that period in time, but obviously with the updated ability to make these things with CG and not have to take a shark into the sea, because nobody's going to do that again, of course.
Nah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think again, to your point, when the movie is actually about the characters and how they're impacted and affected by the shark, the crocodile, the hedgehog, whatever it is, it's like that's actually when you get a better movie that you want to cover. Can you imagine that hedgehog? Hogs. Oh my God,
Yeah.
that's the new one. There we go. We definitely need a meeting after this.
We both-
What are your thoughts on sharks? Because when people watch Jaws, or you mentioned Jaws, some people go, "Oh yeah, sharks, man," or some people are like, "Whoa, sharks, never going in the water again." I know you had that experience that we talked about in sort of Hawaii and everywhere else.
Yeah.
Are you still afraid of sharks, or are you kind of,
Yeah.
oh, actually, no, I can appreciate them for the creatures they are? Where are you on that?
And I can actually pinpoint the moment I was afraid of sharks. As a kid, I think I was like 6 or 7. So I'd been aware that Jaws was around, and there was this poster of this giant thing, and I'd seen the adverts on TV for the screening in '81. But I had a book about dinosaurs, and there was really amazing illustrations, and there was a T-Rex, there was Brontosaurus, and all that. But the first page, it was like a double page, and it was this really long, thin black shark, and it had like multiple fins down it, and it said, did you know sharks have roamed the oceans for 430 million years? And I just remember thinking, well, they've clearly got this shit together, I'm going to avoid them at all costs, because if they've been around that long, and it's like some sharks can live for more than 100 years. We think maybe even longer. We're not sure of the science of the time. And I just thought, goodness me, like I do not want to get anywhere near them, because they're clearly, as is in Jaws as a piece of dialogue, it's the perfectly designed eating machine. It does nothing but swim, eat,
Swim
and
eat, make little sharks.
make little sharks. So I remember that sort of struck a fear in me then. I could have been, I reckon 6, maybe 7.
God,
And then
I love that.
since then, I've been on holiday when my wife and I, when we first got together, we went to Barcelona. I remember swimming in the sea there, and the waves were huge, and she's laughing away, and I'm still thinking, what's going on? Is there anything swimming around underneath me?
No,
You are prey, aren't you?
I'm the thing is, I know that everything you've said is absolutely right, and I love. I think the favorite line that you've said today so far is, these things have been around for 430 million years. They're still here. They've got their shit together. Absolutely right. But the thing for me, it's like whenever there's a place where I go on holiday quite frequently. It's a beautiful little place on the coast of Spain, and they've got this little private kind of beach where I go swimming, and I'm always the one that's going the furthest out. I always go much further than anybody else, like past the safety lines, all that kind of stuff.
Don't you?
Well, I was there one year with my girlfriend, and I came swimming back, and she was like, "You know how far away you went out?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know how far I went out." She goes, "What's wrong with you?" "What were you doing?" I said, "I was looking for sharks." And she's like, "Of course you were." So for me, it's complete. I'm actively trying to find them, but maybe that's just, I don't know. I'm just mad. So we've got some controversial questions for you now. So these are questions that I don't think I shared with you before the interview, because I just want to try and get an in the moment answer, because these are questions that we've posted on social media from time to time that have started wars pretty much. And I'm just interested to hear your thoughts on them. So the first question is from the original Jaws, out of Chrissy, Alex, Pippet, Estuary Victim, Ben Gardner, Quint. Who would you save if you can only save one, and why?
I would save Alex, I think, because he is young, he's got his dog, he's enjoying life. And I think he sort of is the one that kind of deserved that the least, I wouldn't, if I saw the shark, I wouldn't swim out and save him. I'd shout, "Ross, there's a shark out there.
Hello.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the one that kind of gets me the most. And particularly as a dad, I have 3 kids, I have 3 girls.
Mm.
And you see, like I said before, like each time you go through a different part of your life, you go in and see it differently. And when I'd had kids and I saw that scene again, I was like, oh wow, okay, this is hitting a different place entirely.
I felt the same because I don't have children of my own, but I've got two goddaughters and a godson.
Mm.
And whenever I see that, that reaction shot when Brody's on the beach, I absolutely understand that now. Absolutely understand that. It's just like, and that's not even his kid. You know, this is every parent's worst nightmare. You know, if something happening to your child and you can't get to them, you know.
Yeah. I also think I've sort of written almost a little. I've realised just then I've written a little subconscious history of that kid because his mum looks a bit older. And
Yeah.
you might imagine. So I sort of in my head have thought, oh, maybe he's adopted. Maybe she couldn't have children. Maybe his parents couldn't have him. And, you know, it makes it, I don't know, somehow I've made it more heartbreaking. Just,
Well, I think it's a really interesting point because again, that's come up a few times. Like a lot of people are going like, how old is this mum? And also how old is the guy behind her? Like, who is that? You know, when she comes to the dock and sees Brody, because she's obviously accompanied by somebody else. And I think it's a good piece of casting. I mean, Lee Fierro, rest in peace. She was absolutely brilliant in that. And she was the local drama teacher on Martha's Vineyard as well as an actress. And she played that part brilliantly. And if you look very closely, we posted this before, but if you look very closely where Roy Scheider is just about to get slapped to the over the head, the behind him shot, you can see that his cheek is already red from some of the other slaps that she's already dished out to him because it took like 17. So again, another little bit of Jaws trivia for you, for those listening.
another iconic moment, isn't it? That as people talk about that scene just really hitting them in the chest, you know, it's a proper full on moment there.
It is. And I think the other thing as well with Lee's casting, and again, I'd need to double check this, but I think she and Roy Scheider are maybe around the same age as well. So they're older parents, you know, going through that same thing. So I think it might have been a subconscious matching there in terms of the casting, where it's a young mum. Okay, you've probably got time to have another child, whereas Lee Fierro clearly doesn't at that age. You know, this was her one chance to have a child. So that's again why it kind of hits that just that little extra bit more deeply. So yeah, that whole age thing.
Empathy again, doesn't it? That we were talking about earlier. You know, you empathize with people that remain. Whereas with Chrissy, we don't sort of know her from Adam. You know, she could be anyone. She's, you know, she's an overner or a, you know, whatever. That's somebody that doesn't belong.
Yeah, this is the thing that I love about these conversations because everyone's picking out little things that are just slightly different, and it helps you see the movie in a slightly different way or through a slightly different lens. And this is why we've tried to be quite selective with the guests we're speaking to, because everyone is coming from a different place. Because we're speaking to shark experts, people involved in the movie, just well-known, famous fans who love the film and have got their own personal relationship and experience. But it all comes back to that connection, that empathy, that mirror that we've been talking about or talks about before. Next controversial question. Did Pippet live? Because we didn't actually see him die.
I don't think he did because I think dogs are strong swimmers and he would have been back in. I think he probably was inside that shark maybe and just got digested quickly. I don't know, or just left because he was too furry and he didn't taste good, you know.
Well, I did. That's a great answer. I did a video a little while ago about Pippet, and I made a discovery because I was reading. I think it was Memories of Martha's Vineyard, Jim and Matt's book, and there was a little section about Pippet, and I did a bit more digging, found a bit more information, and I thought, well, there's potentially a video here. So I made this video, and I was watching Jaws for it, obviously, any excuse, and I noticed something. There's just after the estuary attack has happened, and Michael Brady's being pulled to shore. There's a shot of Roy Scheider running down the Jaws bridge towards the camera before he vaults over the bridge. Yeah. In the background of that shot is a black Labrador on the bridge.
Ooh. Yeah. So, you know, my mind goes immediately to, well, that was a continuity problem rather than a story element. But yeah.
Or it could just be that there's more than one black lab on Amity Island.
Well, mate, going back to your previous question, maybe The Further Adventures of Pippet is a movie that we didn't get to see and we should see.
Oh my God, the return of Pippet.
I just thought being a VR Pippet running around Amity now.
You get to throw sticks off the beach for Pippet. We've cracked this. This is the one. This is it. Right. I'm going to edit this out of the interview so no one steals these ideas because these are absolute multi-billion-dollar ideas. Virtually playing fetch with a dog from a movie.
That's so stupid. Too far that it gets eaten.
Wow. This is the one, JB. This is it. We've cracked it. Did they need a bigger boat?
I don't think so. I think they needed a more modern boat, probably. I think they needed that boat that Dreyfus and Scheider went out on, because that just seemed a bit more sturdy. I mean, the Orca is an exaggeration, isn't it? I know that Joe went and bought the
Warlock.
Warlock. I was about to say the Merlin, the Warlock, and just decided we've got to kind of make this over the top and make it a bit silly, really. And again, it's like a character, isn't it? All of that stuff that's on the boat and the sign and all of the kit that is there, it just helps define that character. But yeah, I think they needed a better equipped and more modern boat, because I think that boat had just been through the ringer a bit too much, hadn't it? It was a bit kind of, the engine wasn't working grey and the hull's clearly not strong enough. So yeah, not big, just better.
Well, it leads me to my next controversial question, which is the last one, which is why didn't they take Hooper's boat?
I think that was because of Quint, because he's a stubborn bastard, basically. Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie, we're coming to the end of the interview, and it's been fascinating to talk to you. It's been really interesting just to hear your perspective, considering you've been through that whole making of kind of journey through Inside Jaws, but also at heart, you're a fan. What do you think is the legacy of Jaws 50 years later?
I think that Jaws kind of allows us to see like a real milestone in filmmaking. How fortunate are we to have been on this earth at the same time as David Bowie, Steven Spielberg, of all in all of human existence. We've had that kind of 50 years almost. I mean, next year I'll be 50. I think for me, it's just a real kind of milestone in movie history, and it gives me the chance to sort of understand the making of movies and have a bigger appreciation of movies. I think a lot of these movies get lambasted sometimes because, like I said right at the start, it's often talked about the biggest blockbuster and it gets blamed. It's not their fault that they made such a damn good movie, and I think it's just a reminder that if people pull together, if they're at the top of their game, if they pursue something, if they keep at it, and they get the best out of the situation they're in, that you can make magic.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Jamie, thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us. I know you are sort of busy with multiple projects, but thank you for taking some time out to talk to us about Jaws on its 50th anniversary. Before I sign off, do you have any final thoughts for the watchers and listeners?
I just think, I think you guys do a great job on the Daily Jaws. I think people should immediately be following you if they're not already, if they found this out by some other route. But if you're interested in movies, if you love movies, my podcast is there, the Filmumentaries podcast. I've been doing it for 5 years now. I've got 122 episodes, I think it is. Some of them are about Jaws, some of them are not. But I think it's down to us fans, like me and you sitting here right at the moment, it's down to us to carry these legacies forward and keep these and retain these stories for people. So if you're passionate about that kind of stuff, just go and do something. Instead of sitting at home moaning about, oh, this isn't very good, or that isn't very good, this should have happened, that should have happened. Go and do it yourself, and then you'll realize, A, how difficult it is, and B, that maybe you could be the next Spielberg, right? I know I'm not going to be, but I'm going to keep trying doing what I'm doing.
Well, no, we've cornered the VR market. That's what we've just done. Don't you worry about that. We'll leave movies to Spielberg. We can do the VR games. Don't worry, that's our bag now. Wow, what a fantastic way to finish. Jamie, again, thank you so much. And guys, I've been Ross, speaking to Jamie Benning over at Filmumentaries. Please give him a follow, listen to his podcast. It's an incredible show. Please stay tuned for more 50th anniversary interviews, loads more great guests to come. But until next time, and as always, I'll drink to your legs and I'll bid you a fond farewell and adieu. That's it for today's deep dive into Jaws, the film that turned beaches into no-swim zones and created the summer blockbuster. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow, rate and review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And remember, just when you thought it was safe to stop listening, there's plenty more episodes to come. Please be sure to check out the work of Minorities in Shark Sciences and also the Tourette's Association of America. That's it for now, guys, but I'll catch you next time. I'll drink to your legs.